Troubled teen Krista Pike is ready to turn her life around until she meets a man who takes her plans on a dark detour.
Krista knew what she was doing, but it got to the point where she was out of control.
And when he introduces her to a fiendish underworld, the lines between fantasy and reality become hell on earth.
They got so deep in that satanic stuff that they couldn't see the way out.
She was a lamb to the slaughter.
There are hundreds of thousands of women in prison at any given time in the U.S. These are the true stories of women who committed heinous crimes in the name of love. For my man. Forced to fend for herself from an early age in Knoxville, Tennessee, Krista Pike is a fighter by nature. Although she's an only child, she receives anything but love and affection.
Krista, she had a really rough upbringing. Her father was around a little bit, but her mother was kind of in and out of her life.
Her mother smoked pot and that kind of stuff. That is not a good environment for a child to grow up in.
And her sense of abandonment only escalates when her parents decide to call it quits. As Mom celebrates her newfound freedom, she's home less and less. Krista is often left with any relative who will have her.
When we're looking at physical abuse versus neglect, neglect by itself can be just as serious as the physical abuse. The emotional scars that are part of the neglect are very real. And it affects the way that they look at other people. It affects the way that they form relationships.
For the next 9 years, Krista bounces between her parents' homes. And the lack of structure causes the now 17-year-old to start doing drugs and seeking comfort in the arms of strange boys.
Sadly, because there was no structure, Krista had no boundaries. She had no rules.
Having failed to make a connection with her parents, Krista relies on finding friends in high school. Unfortunately, her desertion issues leave her with very few people skills, turning Krista into a follower rather than a leader.
A lot of her friends had dropped out of school, and so at 18 years old, she dropped out of school.
Krista's life at this point was all but empty. So she just threw up her arms and said, I quit. She just was not getting love. She wasn't getting attention.
See how lame they looked?
And so she decided to not be a victim.
In an effort to turn her life around, she applies for and gets accepted into Job Corps, a government-sponsored career training program for at-risk and low-income youth, housed out of the University of Tennessee.
The original concept of Job Corps, mostly for Appalachian kids to be able to work at certain things, trades, get schooling.
She quickly moves into the dorms and enrolls in a computer programming class, hoping to work in the technology field. Though instead of shifting towards a career, Krista spends her time interfacing with 17-year-old Tadarrell Shipp, a classmate who pushes all the right buttons.
Tadarrell wasn't the kind of kid that got in trouble. He wasn't the kind of kid who had a record. He just was your average guy.
After getting to know each other in and out of class, Krista learns Tadarrell has also struggled his whole life to make friends. And like Krista, he has enough emotional damage to last a lifetime.
Misery loves company, and therefore it really does form the foundation for a very intense love connection.
Their commonalities quickly bring them together, and it doesn't take long for the two to date exclusively. But Krista soon learns that her new man isn't like the others.
Krista found out that Tadarrell was very into occult culture, and he worshiped Satan.
He wore a pentagram necklace. He had a sacrificial altar in his room. He had a Bible that spoke of loving Satan.
Krista has never been religious, but she's madly in love with Tadarrell. So she doesn't think twice about following him into the netherworld.
They would perform rituals and read from the Satanic Bible. Of course, Tadarrell was a huge influence, but she started to own this.
He got her into the satanic worship, and that became a big part of both their lives.
After just 2 months of dating, the former loner finds herself under Tadarrell's spell. And she can't imagine life without her pagan partner in crime.
This was a union of souls, two people who found their niche in life, and they were ready to just take this dream and run with it.
Then, On the eve of Friday the 13th, a day Tadaryl refers to as the devil's birthday, he says it's time to offer their master a human sacrifice.
For Tadaryl, this was a way to worship their equivalent of their king, and their king was Satan.
In preparing the ultimate celebration for his master, he'll need Krista's help.
There's one thing to talk about birthday celebrations when it comes to the devil,
Take off your shirt.
but then there's another thing to actually do it.
Tadaryl was her boyfriend, and she would do anything for him.
In Knoxville, Tennessee, 19-year-old Krista Pike has been led down a dark path by Job Corps classmate Tadaryl Shipp, a man who worships Satan as much as he does Krista. But things take an even darker turn when her beau suggests they kidnap a human sacrifice.
At first, Krista thought that Tadaryl was just joking, but the more she thought about it, the more it seemed attractive, appealing, because she couldn't do it on her own, but this tie that they had allowed them to do something that would have been unspeakable.
To help with their sadistic celebration, the couple enlists a fellow Satanist, 18-year-old Shadala Peterson.
Shadala was a friend of Krista's, and she was also in the Job Corps program.
After discussing possible sacrificial offerings, Krista thinks she knows the perfect candidate. A classmate she thinks has been trying to break she and Tadaryl up, Colleen Slemmer.
Krista and Colleen were rivals at Job Corps, and Krista didn't really like the fact that Colleen was friends with Tadaryl.
Tadaryl made some kind of remarks about Colleen being pretty or sharp or sexy or something. That's what didn't sit well with Krista.
Tadaryl has always assured his love that there's nothing going on between the two, but Krista doesn't care.
Although this was originally Tadaryl's idea, Krista started owning it, and she made it hers, because now she could accomplish three things. She could worship Satan, she could do this for her man, Tadaryl, and third, she could get rid of what she thought was a rival for the affections of Tadaryl.
On the night before Satan's birthday, Krista gathers up some knives, a box cutter, and her satanic Bible. She then rings Colleen, inviting her along with the group to an abandoned steam mill just off campus, telling her she wants to smoke some weed as a peace offering and make things right between them.
Colleen just wanted to bury the hatchet, so she went along and she said yes.
She was a pretty smart girl, and I think if she even thought that there was going to be a fight, that she wouldn't win.
Around 8 o'clock, Krista, Tadaryl, Shadala, and Colleen sign out of the Job Corps dormitory and head towards the mill next door to the grounds.
It's probably a 15, 20-minute walk, and it's pretty remote, and that was the whole idea. They had to get her in a remote area.
The group makes small talk as they start their journey, but the second they reach the edge of campus, Krista takes out her bubbling aggression on the unsuspecting student.
Krista started yelling at Colleen, ordering her to take off her shirt. At that point, she pushes her to the ground.
Colleen tries futilely to defend herself, but is quickly put back in place by Krista, who's now wielding a box cutter she brought from the dorm.
She was dazed, she was confused, and had very little time to react or to prevent the lashes that were going across her breast, her neck, her stomach.
As the struggle continues, Shadala watches on as Tadaryl jumps in to help his lady love.
While Krista is stabbing Colleen with the box cutter, Tadaryl is beating her.
Just then, Krista pulls a meat cleaver from her backpack and slashes the girl several times across the chest.
It's not clear what Krista's motivation was. Maybe it was the long years of resentment she had because of the dysfunctional relationship with her father. Maybe it was an undisclosed mental illness that was coming to fruition. Whatever the case, Krista showed absolutely no remorse in her homicidal actions.
For the next hour and a half, the duo tortures Colleen with reckless abandon. Shadala witnesses the entire attack, but does nothing to help Colleen. Finally, Krista grabs a hunk of concrete from the broken pavement and smashes it repeatedly into Colleen's skull.
She was hearing voices in her head that told her to see her brain spill.
And unfortunately, Krista got her wish. Colleen's brain matter did spew. That's how badly Colleen was beaten.
With their classmate mortally wounded, Krista decides to put the finishing touches on their ceremony, forming a circle around Colleen and summoning the Dark Lord.
They did actually a satanic chant around her body to release her soul.
Krista grabbed a box cutter to carve a pentagram into her chest and her head, and this was kind of the stamp for them to say that the ritual was completed.
This must have been a combination of excitement and fear as they lived out this dark fantasy. But these were really young kids who had never been involved in anything like this before.
Just then, Colleen takes her final breath, and the group knows they have to get rid of her body.
Shadala, Tadaro, and Krista decided to move her body deeper into the woods and cover her with dirt and debris.
With the victim hidden, the trio hoofs it to a gas station a few miles down the road to clean up and dispose of any incriminating evidence.
They throw away Colleen's driver's license. They also throw away the meat cleaver they use and the box cutter before they head back to their dorm.
By all accounts, the sadistic teens have pulled off the perfect crime, while Krista fulfilled her darkest fantasy in the name of love.
She was just happy and giddy. She'd actually done what she really wanted to do. That was the pinnacle of her life.
In Krista's mind, she accomplished two things. She got rid of her competition in Colleen, as well as solidifying her relationship with her man Tadaro.
However, it doesn't take long for Krista's loose lips to sink their murderous ship. And later, in Richmond, Virginia, Selena Hairston learns that sticking by the wrong man can sever even the strongest family ties.
She was willing to stand up for her man and let him beat this woman.
There was no limit as far as what they would do or how far they would go to keep each other happy.
After murdering Colleen Slemmer as part of a satanic ritual in Knoxville, Tennessee, classmates Krista Pike, Tadaro Shipp, and Shadala Peterson think they're in the clear, and Krista is free to resume worshiping her man of 6 months.
She'd do anything or be willing to even lead them into anything that she thought was good for their relationship.
In some twisted, pathological way, Krista really took this to an incredible level. Not only was she able to act it out and own it, but she was able to show to Daryl that she really loved him by doing this. This was part of her devotion.
But the morning after the killing, as a relaxed Tadaro chills out in his dorm room, Krista recounts to several friends, kidnapping Colleen, bashing her head with concrete, and leaving the devil's mark in her chest.
She was dancing in circles, and the more bizarre part, she was happy about it, and she was singing, and her friends seemed horrified.
Hoping Krista would never be capable of taking her dark obsession to such a deadly level, her friends call her bluff. That's when Krista shows them all the terrifying proof they need, a piece of Colleen's shattered skull.
One of the girls asked her where Colleen was at, and she patted her coat pocket, so I'm having breakfast with her.
We've seen this in sociopaths and psychopaths and serial killers who brag about their crimes. They keep souvenirs, but they want people to know exactly what they're doing because they're taking pride in this very twisted behavior.
She gets real energetic when she's reliving what she did.
Horrified, Colleen's dorm mates disperse as Krista returns to her room. But her destiny is about to take a detour when later that day, a campus employee working the grounds spots Colleen's mangled remains. Within minutes, officers swarm the scene and immediately recognize Colleen's satanic injuries.
I went to school on it. I knew what that was.
In their quest for answers, investigators start by questioning folks at the Job Corps' adjoining campus. And it doesn't take long to identify 3 suspects and their prey, Colleen, after checking out the logbooks.
There's 4 people that signed out, and then later the 3 signed back in, and that's how I developed her as a victim.
To find out what happened, York tracks down the other 3 students who signed out with Colleen Slemmer that night, Krista, Tadaro, and Shadala. All are calm as can be when questioned, even allowing police to search their rooms.
When the officers searched Tadarrell's room, they found a satanic Bible and an altar. But more interesting, they found bloody clothes. And they also found the same thing in Krista's room, more bloody clothes. And when they were questioned, they had no explanation for it.
Quite often, someone who is very inexperienced in some crime they've taken part of, they believe that if they cooperate and even over cooperate, they will not be under suspicion, and that's the giveaway to law enforcement.
Police are sure the blood belongs to Colleen and have enough probable cause to arrest all 3 students for Colleen's murder. At the station, Krista, Tadarrell, and Shadala are interrogated separately. And when detectives start with Krista, she cheerfully takes credit for killing her classmate.
I killed her.
She was happy. She was very talkative.
Yeah, and then
She became cocky and talked about what she had done. She went into detail saying how she sliced her and carved in her chest, in her head.
When we're looking at the personality of Krista, it's easy to ask, would she have done this if she didn't come under the spell of Tadarrell? And I think looking at the seriousness of her crime, she probably would have acted out at some point. She was a ticking time bomb.
Meanwhile, when Tadarrell learns his girlfriend came clean, he promptly follows suit.
Tadarrell was very cooperative in his statement. He was very calm,
She must have come clean.
easy-natured, and I just got the impression he just wanted to tell all of it.
Finally, when police speak with Shadala, she only admits to being present and moving the body, but not actually participating in the attack.
She really tried to dilute what she did as more of, I'm standing here watching all this, but she did as much as they did.
In exchange for her testimony against Krista and Tadarrell, Shadala Peterson pleads guilty to accessory after the fact and is placed on probation for 6 years. For brutally murdering Colleen, Krista Pike is charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. She is sentenced to death in the electric chair.
In Krista's mind, she felt like she put her victim out of her misery, but she's going to have to fry for it. She didn't feel like, because of what she did, she deserved to die. How ironic.
For his role, Tadarrell pleads guilty to first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, and is sentenced to life in prison plus 25 years. Behind bars, Krista never once expresses remorse for her heinous actions.
After the sentencing, Krista wrote a letter to Tadarrell, and she wrote in the letter she felt like she was being punished for doing Colleen a favor by bashing her brains out.
Krista was on the road to redemption until a silver-tongued devil led her down a dead end.
Had they never come together, those traits may have not came out. They were there, but once their personalities meshed, then they become evil, really evil.
Krista wanted so much to be loved by her parents, wanted so much to be loved by her father, that she fell in love with a man who loved the devil, and that's how much she wanted acceptance and she wanted love, that she would do anything to have it.
We may never know all of the reasons why Krista was part of this horrific murder, but one of the things we do know is that she loved Tadarrell, and that love never wavered. And because of that, she's going to spend the rest of her life behind bars, or until they pull that switch.
Krista Pike opened her heart to darkness for the man she loved, only to be put through